The girl who smiled at the wrong time. It was a cloudy evening in early March, the kind where the sky looks tired and everything feels slower. Sundar Pichai stood in the fresh produce section of a small supermarket in San Jose, California. He wore a dark hoodie, old jeans, and sneakers that had seen better days. He was not dressed like a CEO. He didn't look like someone who had spoken to world leaders or changed the way billions searched the internet. He looked like any other man, tired from a long week and hungry for something simple. He had just landed from a red-eye flight from Singapore and wanted to grab a few groceries before heading to his apartment. No driver, no assistant, no entourage. He enjoyed moments like this. They reminded him of the life he had before the world knew his name. He pushed a cart slowly past, rows of apples and oranges, pausing at the bananas. He reached out but dropped one. It rolled across the floor and stopped at the feet of a young girl in a red apron. She bent down, picked it up, and smiled. Her name tag said Jaya, and she couldn't have been more than 22. She held out the banana, her smile warm and natural. "Long day?" she asked in a gentle voice that didn't demand an answer. Sundar looked at her for a moment. There was something familiar in her eyes. Kindness, maybe, or a quiet sort of strength. "Something like that," he said, accepting the banana. Jaya didn't know who he was. Or maybe she did, but didn't care. That made Sundar feel oddly relaxed. Most people who recognized him either wanted a photo or started pitching him ideas. But she just kept arranging the fruit, humming to herself. Sundar continued shopping, but found his thoughts drifting back to her. Not because of the banana, because of how she had smiled like it mattered. 20 minutes later, Sundar stood at the checkout waiting in line behind a mother with 2 screaming kids. His cart wasn't full, just some eggs, milk, bread, and fruit. Jaya passed by again, this time carrying a box of canned goods. She waved quickly. He waved back. A man behind the counter noticed the interaction, his jaw tightening. His name was Steve, the assistant manager. He had been watching Jaya all week. He didn't like how she smiled at customers, especially men. He thought it looked unprofessional, but mostly he didn't like that people liked her. After Sundar paid and started walking toward the door, he heard something strange, a voice. Loud, sharp, angry. He turned. Steve was yelling at Jaya. "You think you can just chat with anyone who walks in here? You think that's your job? You're here to stock shelves, not make friends." The store went silent. A few customers pretended not to hear. Sundar froze. He saw Jaya's face go pale. Her smile was gone now, replaced with something smaller. Broken, she tried to explain. "I was just helping a customer. He dropped—" "I don't care," Steve interrupted. "Clock out. You're done." "You mean, for the day?" "No," he said coldly. "I mean you're fired." The word hit the air like a slap. Sundar felt something twist in his chest. Jaya stood still, not speaking. She looked at the floor, not angry, not crying, just quiet, like someone who had expected this moment but hoped it would never come. Sundar stepped forward. "Excuse me," he said, his voice calm but firm. "That wasn't right." Steve turned. "Sir, this is not your concern. It is now." Sundar replied. "I dropped that banana. She helped me. She was polite, respectful. If that's a reason to fire someone, then maybe you're the one who needs to clock out." Steve blinked, unsure whether to laugh or yell. "Who even are you?" Sundar looked at him for a long moment. Then he smiled. "No one important." Jaya looked up. Her eyes met Sundar's. Something passed between them. Respect, maybe, or gratitude. But also confusion. Why would a stranger defend her like that? Steve grumbled something and walked away. Jaya stood alone, holding her apron in her hands. The store buzzed back to life, but for her, the moment stayed frozen. Outside, the wind had picked up. Sundar waited near the entrance. When Jaya stepped out holding a small paper bag with her few belongings, he spoke again. "I'm sorry that happened." "It's okay," she said quietly. "It's not the first time." "It shouldn't happen to anyone," he replied. "What?" Will you do now? She shrugged. I don't know. Maybe find another store. Maybe nothing. I've been working 2 jobs. This one mattered more. Sundar nodded. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small card. No company name. Just a number. Call me tomorrow, he said. Not for charity. Just, I might know a place that needs someone like you. She hesitated. Why would you help me? He thought for a second, then said, because once someone helped me, and it changed everything. Jaya looked at the card, then back at him. What do you do? I work in tech, he said simply. She smiled again, but this time it was cautious. Okay, maybe I'll call. He nodded. I hope you do. She walked away slowly, disappearing into the gray evening. Sundar stood there, watching, thinking about the way her smile had vanished so quickly. He didn't know why, but something told him that this moment, this tiny meeting in a supermarket, would mean more than either of them could imagine. What Sundar didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that Jaya's life was far more complicated than it seemed. And by giving her that card, he hadn't just opened a door. He had pulled on a thread that was connected to secrets much older and wounds much deeper than either of them could see. And soon, both their lives would begin to unravel. The card. That changed everything. Jaya sat on the edge of her small bed, staring at the plain white card. The room around her was quiet. Too quiet. Just a ticking clock on the wall, and the distant sound of a dog barking outside. She lived in a small basement, apartment behind an old house in East San Jose. It smelled a little like dust and warm laundry. The carpet was thin, the light was dim, and the ceiling was too low in some places. But it was hers. Or at least it had been, until the store job ended. Now rent was a question, not a certainty. The card sat in her hand like a question mark. No name, just a phone number printed in soft gray ink. The stranger from the supermarket had said he worked in tech. He had looked serious, kind, maybe even important, but he hadn't said much. She didn't recognize him, and she had no idea that he was one of the most powerful men in Silicon Valley. She didn't watch the news. She worked. She studied. She survived. It had been 2 days since she'd seen him. For a while, she thought about throwing the card away. People didn't just hand out opportunities. Not real ones. Not to people like her. She had learned that lesson the hard way, but there was something in his voice, something steady and strange, like he was used to being listened to. And maybe, just maybe, he really had meant what he said. So, on the 3rd morning, with her hands shaking a little, she called the number. It rang twice, then a voice picked up, soft, calm, familiar. Hello? Hi, Jaya said. You gave me a card. At the supermarket, I wasn't sure if you meant it. I did, the voice said. Thank you for calling. He didn't sound surprised. He sounded like he had been waiting. They talked for 10 minutes. He asked her about school, about work, about what she liked doing. He didn't ask for a resume or a LinkedIn profile. He didn't talk like a recruiter. He listened. At the end of the call, he said, Can you come to Mountain View tomorrow morning? I'd like to introduce you to someone. She paused. To who? Someone who might be able to help you. Someone who helped me. And then he said goodbye. Jaya barely slept that night. Her thoughts spun in circles. Who was this man? What kind of help was he offering? Could she trust it? Was it even real? Or was she walking into something strange, something dangerous? But something deep in her gut, something she couldn't explain, told her to go. The next morning, she caught a train to Mountain View. The sky was bright blue, the kind of sky that made the city seem new again. She wore her cleanest jeans and a soft gray sweater. Her hair was tied back. No makeup. She didn't want to pretend. She wanted to be real. When she arrived at the address he had given her, she blinked in surprise. The building was tall, made of glass and steel with a quiet power to it. There were no loud signs, no crowds, just calm. She walked inside, past security, past a long corridor and into a quiet room filled with sunlight and soft chairs. He was already there. He stood when she entered. Same hoodie, same jeans, but this time he looked more like himself, like someone who belonged here. Jaya finally asked, "Who are you?" He smiled. "I told you, I work in tech." "But where?" "Here," he said. "Google." She blinked. "You work at Google?" "I run it." There was a long silence. Jaya sat down slowly. Her heart was beating faster. She looked at him again, properly this time, and suddenly, the pieces clicked into place. The face, the voice, the calmness. She had seen him once on a news clip years ago. She just hadn't connected it. "You're Sundar Pichai," she whispered. He nodded. "Yes." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want it to matter." She looked down at her hands. She felt embarrassed, small, but he didn't treat her that way. He leaned forward. "When I came to this country, I didn't know anyone. I had no money. I made mistakes. But someone gave me a chance. Not because I deserved it, but because they saw something in me. I never forgot that. And when I saw you stand there in that store, being punished for being kind, I knew I had to do something." She swallowed hard. "But I don't know anything about tech." "That's okay," he said. "What matters more is how you treat people. The rest can be taught." Then he handed her a folder. Inside was a letter, an offer, an internship with a team at Google focused on user research. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't high-paying, but it was real. It was a door. She stared at it, unable to speak. "I don't want anything in return," Sundar said, "but you have to promise me one thing." "What?" "When it's your turn to open a door for someone, don't hesitate." Jaya nodded slowly. Tears were starting to build in her eyes. "I won't." The next few weeks passed like a blur. Jaya started the internship. It was strange at first. Corporate buildings, digital tools, meetings filled with words she didn't understand. But she learned. She watched. She asked questions, and the team began to notice her. Not because she was brilliant or fast, but because she cared. She listened deeply. She connected dots others missed. And when she spoke, people listened. But not everyone was happy about her presence. In the corner of the team sat a man named Brent. He had been at the company for years, smart, confident, well-dressed, and quietly bitter. He noticed how often Sundar dropped by the office when Jaya was around. He noticed how quickly she was learning. And most of all, he noticed that she didn't have a degree from Stanford or a startup on her resume. He didn't like that. One day he pulled her aside. His voice was smooth, but his eyes were cold. "Enjoy the ride," he said, "because when Sundar gets bored, it'll end." Jaya didn't respond. She just stared at him, steady and silent. She had heard that kind of voice before. People who thought they knew the rules, people who used smiles like knives, but something was changing inside her. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel afraid. Still, Brent's words stuck in her mind, and late one evening she stayed back after the others had left. She sat in the quiet office looking at a report she had been asked to summarize. It was full of numbers, patterns, lines of data. And then something strange caught her eye. A small error, a number that didn't match. She checked it again, and again. It didn't make sense. It was small, but important. And the deeper she looked, the more she saw. Someone had changed the data. Carefully, deliberately. It wasn't a mistake. It was a cover-up. And the name attached to that section? Brent Jaya sat still for a long moment. The office silent around her. Outside, the lights of the city blinked like distant stars. She didn't know what to do. If she reported it, she could be fired. Or worse. Brent was connected, powerful, and she was just an intern. But she remembered Sundar's voice. "When it's your turn to open a door for someone, don't hesitate." Maybe it was her turn now. As she stood up, the office door creaked. Someone was watching her. The door that wouldn't close, Jaya froze in place. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the air conditioner and the quiet click of a distant keyboard. She stared at the open office door. It hadn't made much noise, just a gentle creak, the kind of sound that wouldn't matter unless you were doing something you weren't supposed to. Her heart started to beat faster. She turned slowly. No one was there. But something had changed. She could feel it. The air felt heavier. The lights overhead seemed too bright. Jaya quickly gathered the printed reports she had been reading and slipped them into her bag. She didn't want to be caught with them out in the open. Her instincts were sharp, born from years of staying cautious. She trusted them now. Whatever she had found, it wasn't just a mistake, and she wasn't alone. Outside, the hall was quiet. Most of the office had emptied out hours ago. She walked calmly toward the exit, every step slow and careful. She didn't run. She didn't look around too much. She knew that looking nervous could be more dangerous than carrying the truth. When she got home that night, she locked her door and checked it twice. She didn't turn on the lights right away. She just sat on the floor by her bed, the folder open in front of her. She went over the numbers again, line by line. It was all there. The project was a user engagement pilot meant to test a new recommendation algorithm. And Brent's section? It had been modified. The success rates were exaggerated. The users had dropped off in reality, but the data said they stayed longer. It made the system look better than it really was. It made Brent look like a genius, and that lie had already been presented to higher-ups. Jaya leaned back against the wall. She had two choices now. Stay quiet and let it go, or speak up and risk everything. She was an intern. No degree, no backup plan. But she knew what the right thing was. The problem was that doing the right thing was almost never safe. The next morning, she didn't go to work right away. Instead, she went to a small park near the office and waited. Sundar had told her once if she ever needed to talk about anything important, she could message him. She had never used that permission until now. She typed one short line into her phone. "I need to speak to you privately. It's urgent." She didn't expect a fast reply, but 2 minutes later he answered. 12:15. Meet me in the basement, cafe. No one uses it anymore. The cafe was quiet, tucked away below the main building, behind a hallway lined with vending machines and faded posters. The lights were soft, the furniture old. Sundar sat at a corner table, a simple mug in front of him. He looked tired but alert. When he saw her, he nodded. Jaya sat down and handed him the report. No words at first, just paper. He flipped through it slowly, page by page. His face didn't change, but his eyes did. They sharpened, narrowed. He understood exactly what he was seeing. When he finished, he looked up. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "I triple-checked. It wasn't a mistake. You know what this means?" "Yes," she said. "I could lose everything." Sundar leaned back in his chair. He didn't rush to speak. He looked at her for a long time, then finally said, "You're brave. I'm proud of you." Those words hit her harder than she expected. She didn't realize how much she had needed to hear them. She blinked quickly, swallowing the lump in her throat. "What should I do?" she asked. "Nothing more," he said. "Leave this with me." She hesitated. "But what if they come after me?" "They won't," he said quietly. "Not if I make the first move." And then he stood up. That afternoon, a quiet storm began to build behind the walls of the company. Sundar didn't go straight to human resources. He went to a trusted team of internal auditors, people who didn't answer to Brent, people who cared about truth. He asked them to verify Jaya's findings. He told them not to mention her name yet. Within 24 hours, they confirmed it. The data had been altered. The logs showed changes from Brent's terminal. It wasn't just unethical, it was dangerous. It could affect product decisions. It could damage trust. Sundar didn't wait. He called a private meeting with legal, compliance, and one other person, Brent. The meeting didn't last long. When Brent was told what they had found, He didn't deny it. He smiled, leaned back in his chair, and said, "You think this matters? You'll bury it. You always do. It's how things work here." Sundar looked at him for a moment. "Not anymore," he said. By the end of the day, Brent's badge access was revoked. Word spread quickly, but quietly. Most people didn't know the details. They just knew someone important had been let go, and someone new had caught the mistake. A few people guessed who. No one said it out loud. Jaya kept working, but things had changed. People noticed her now. Some looked at her with respect, others with caution. But one person watched her with something darker: Brent. He hadn't left the city, he was angry, and he wasn't done. A week later, Jaya received a message. No sender name. Just a short, chilling line. "You think this is over? It's just starting." She showed the message to Sundar. He brought in security. They tried to trace it, but it had been sent through an encrypted app. Untraceable. Just a shadow, in the dark. Jaya didn't sleep that night, or the night after. Then on the third day, something strange happened. When she entered her apartment, she found a single envelope on her table. She hadn't left it there. She picked it up slowly. Inside was a photo. It was her in the supermarket handing Sundar the banana. The photo had been taken from outside the store. From a distance. On the back of the photo, 4 words were written in red ink. "You ruined the game." Jaya sat down, her hands cold. Someone was watching her, someone who wanted her scared. She thought about quitting, disappearing, going back to a life where no one noticed her. But then she thought about that first moment. The way Sundar had stood up for her. The way she had found her voice. The truth mattered even when it hurt. And so she did something bold. She went to Sundar and said, "I want to stay. I want to fight. But I can't do it alone." He looked at her with quiet pride. "You won't have to," he said, but neither of them knew what was coming, because Brent wasn't working alone. And the next time he reached out, it wouldn't be a warning. The shadow in the hallway. For the next 2 weeks, Jaya's life became a delicate act of pretending. Pretending she wasn't afraid. Pretending she didn't check over her shoulder every time she walked to the train. Pretending the lights in her apartment didn't flicker late at night. Pretending she didn't hear the creak of the hallway floorboards when no one was supposed to be there. She kept working. Every morning she showed up at the office early and left late. She studied harder, stayed sharper, spoke more carefully. She was no longer just the intern. She had become the quiet storm inside the building. People didn't talk about it out loud, but everyone knew. She had taken down Brent. She had been noticed by Sundar. And no one wanted to be on the wrong side of that. But power is a strange thing. It attracts people, and it also invites danger. Brent had disappeared, from the company but not from the city. Jaya didn't know where he was. She had stopped looking, but she could feel him. Not physically, psychologically, in the small things. The static on her phone line, the way her laptop froze at strange moments, the unknown number that called her at 3:17 a.m. and stayed silent for 40 seconds before hanging up. Then there were the emails. They started small, just blank messages from strange addresses. Then came the ones with short sentences. "How's the internship? Still feel safe? You never belonged there." She didn't reply. She saved them, printed them, handed them to the internal security team Sundar had connected her with. They were kind, professional, cautious. They promised to look into it. But each time the trail ended nowhere. Untraceable sources. Blocked proxies. It was like chasing a ghost. Still, she held her ground. One Friday morning, Sundar called her into a private office. The glass walls were tinted, the blinds half closed. He looked calm, but his fingers tapped against the table just once every few seconds. "I want to talk to you about something," he said. She nodded. "Is it about the messages?" He shook his head. "It's about your future." Jaya blinked. "My future?" "I've been watching how you work," he said. "You're focused, patient, you learn quickly, and you care about people. That's rare. I want you to stay, not just as an intern but as a junior researcher, full-time. I've already spoken with her. Jaya stared at him. It was too much. Too soon. Too unreal. Why me? She asked quietly. He didn't smile. He looked serious. Because you remind me of myself. The part of me that didn't know what came next but refused to let the world decide. She looked down, hiding the tears that had suddenly filled her eyes. She nodded. Thank you. He paused. But there's something else you need to know. Her body tensed. He leaned in. The man who was watching you, he wasn't working alone. I know, she said. How? She reached into her bag and pulled out something she hadn't shown anyone yet, not even the security team. It was a small black flash drive. She slid it across the table. This was taped under my mailbox, she said. No note, just this. Sundar took it. What's on it? I haven't looked. He turned to his laptop and inserted the drive. It took a moment. Then a folder opened. Inside were several video files, numbered. Sundar clicked the first. 1. The screen showed Jaya, standing in the office kitchen pouring tea. Then in the hallway, laughing with another intern. Then alone in a stairwell, staring out the window. The camera was hidden somewhere inside the building. Sundar stopped the video. His face was unreadable. This is inside the company, he said. She nodded slowly. Who has access to the internal camera network? Only a few, he said. But that system isn't supposed to be recordable. They both sat in silence. He had help, Sundar whispered. Someone on the inside. For the next week, everything changed. An internal investigation was launched. Quietly. Not even the press caught wind of it. Jaya was assigned a new workspace in a more secure area. She was told not to walk alone at night. A driver was offered to her. She refused. She didn't want fear to shape her life. But every night she checked behind her. Every morning she scanned her desk for anything out of place. The office no longer felt like a place of growth. It felt like a puzzle box. Then, one morning, a breakthrough came. A name. The person who had accessed the hidden camera footage was a systems engineer named Malik. He had worked in the building for over 8 years. Kept to himself. Never caused trouble. No red flags. But when his system access logs were pulled, they found evidence. He had copied files to a secure server that wasn't part of the company network. He had overwritten camera feeds and installed a hidden data bridge. He wasn't just helping Brent. He had built the entire system. They called him in for questioning. But Malik didn't show up. His phone was off. His apartment was empty. Gone. Full internal alert was issued. Police were contacted. Sundar himself approved the action, but by then it was too late. That evening, Jaya came home to find her door unlocked. Nothing had been stolen. Nothing had been moved. But on her kitchen table was a note. No envelope. No handwriting. Just a printed sentence on plain white paper. You still think this is about data? Jaya sat down, her legs shaking. She read the note again, and again. That sentence changed everything. Until now, she had believed this was about revenge, about exposing Brent, about a career ruined and a man who couldn't let go. But this note suggested something more, something bigger. A plan, not just to punish her, but to use her. And then she remembered something Sundar had said on the very first day. Someone helped me once. Someone who changed everything. What if that person wasn't who he thought they were? What if the thread she had pulled was part of a much deeper knot? As she stared at the note, a memory came back. Something she had seen in the folder weeks ago. A file name. Nothing special at the time. But now, it burned in her mind. Project Saffron. She hadn't opened it. It had been in the background of the report, a forgotten file. But now it felt like the center of everything. And as she opened her laptop and searched for it, she had no idea that she was about to uncover something the company had buried years ago, something they hoped no one would ever find. The silence behind Project Saffron Jaya sat on the floor of her apartment, her back against the cold wall, the room dark except for the soft glow of her laptop screen. The word saffron blinked back at her from the search bar. It looked harmless. Just a project name, like 100 others she had seen during her internship. But something about it didn't feel right. It was the way it had been hidden, buried deep in the company archives, not in the open folders, not with the usual labels. It had been there in the background of the report she reviewed when she first discovered Brent's manipulation. But no one had mentioned it. Not Sundar. Not the audit team. No one. She opened the file. At first, the contents were simple. A project overview, a timeline, budget notes, standard corporate language. But as she read further, the details began to shift. The language became vague. The goals were described as behavioral influence through search flow optimization. There were charts, graphs, heat maps. Jaya didn't understand all of it, but she saw the patterns. The project had started 3 years ago. It had been tested on a small group of users. Not employees, not volunteers, ordinary people. They had been selected based on their browsing habits, their emotional patterns, their vulnerability. The goal was not to improve user experience. The goal was to change decisions. Jaya's hands began to tremble. She scrolled down, past the data, past the summaries, to a page titled Deployment Analysis. Phase 2. There were names, phone numbers, even physical addresses. Users who had been tracked over months, some even a full year. Their screen time was manipulated. Search results were gently but deliberately adjusted. Certain ads were pushed to them during times of emotional distress. The effect was subtle but measurable. Some had changed careers. Some had dropped out of college. One had filed for divorce, and it had all been logged. The people behind the project had celebrated this. They called it proof of influence. They said it showed the system worked, and at the bottom of the page in small gray text, Jaya saw the names of the lead developers. Brent was one of them. And the other? Malik. She closed the laptop slowly. Now she understood. Brent hadn't just been falsifying reports to make himself look good. He was covering something up, something darker, something dangerous. Project Saffron wasn't a failure. It was a secret. One that had never been approved by ethics teams. One that had been buried quietly when internal complaints started surfacing. Jaya stared into the darkness of her room, her chest tight. She didn't know whether to cry or scream. She picked up her phone. Her hands moved fast, almost automatically. She sent a single message to Sundar. "We need to talk. It's about Saffron." Within 2 minutes, he replied, "Come to my apartment. Now." She left immediately. When she arrived, he was already waiting at the door. He looked more tired than she had ever seen him. Not because of work, but because of weight. The weight of knowing something for too long and finally being forced to face it. He let her in, locked the door behind her, and didn't speak for a moment. Then he said quietly, "How much did you read?" "Enough," Jaya replied. He sat down, on the couch, and rubbed his forehead. "I knew about the project, not everything, just the surface version. It was pitched to me as a user experience tool. Behavioral smoothing. They said it would help people find better results. They never told me about the real trials." "Did you approve it?" she asked. "I approved the concept," he said, "not the execution. I shut it down the moment I saw the first complaints. They promised it had never launched beyond a controlled environment. I trusted them." Jaya sat across from him, silent. She didn't know whether to believe him, but part of her wanted to. "Brent didn't trust that it would stay buried," Sundar continued. "He knew if anyone ever traced the false reports back, Saffron would resurface. That's why he covered it up. And when you found the data, he knew the threat wasn't just personal. It was systemic." Jaya leaned forward. "He's not finished." Sundar looked up. "What do you mean?" She reached into her bag and pulled out a second flash drive. "This came today." He plugged it into his laptop. It held only one file. A video. They watched it in silence. It showed a room, dimly lit. Concrete walls. A single hanging light. In the middle, Malik stood with his hands tied behind his back. His face was bruised. He spoke directly into the camera. "If you're watching this," he said, "then you found it." Saffron was never shut down. It was moved, repackaged, renamed. It's being used now. Not just by tech companies, not just here, everywhere. They used us to build it, and then they used us to hide it. He looked off camera. Someone spoke, but the words were muted. "Brent thinks he's in control," Malik said. "But he's wrong. This goes deeper than him. He's just the mask. There's something behind him. Something older." Then the screen went black. Sundar sat back, staring. "We need to go to the board," Jaya said. "We need to tell the world." "No," Sundar said quietly. "Not yet." "Why?" "Because if we do, and we're not ready, they'll bury us too." Jaya swallowed hard. "So what do? We trace it, we follow the data. If Saffron is still active, we find where, we find how, and we build proof so strong no one can deny it." He paused. "But it's going to be dangerous." "I know," she said. "You could be followed. Your phone, your email, everything." "I understand." He nodded. "Then we start tomorrow." She stood. But before she left, she asked one last question. "Who gave Brent the protection to keep Saffron alive this long?" Sundar looked at her and said just one word: "The Foundation." Jaya frowned. "What's that?" "A group," he said. "They don't have a public name. They're not part of Google, not officially, but they sit on advisory panels, investment boards. They shape decisions from the shadows, and if Saffron was valuable, they would never let it go." The room felt colder suddenly. Outside, the wind howled softly. Jaya didn't know it yet, but everything was about to change. Because the next morning, when she opened her inbox, she found a new message from an anonymous sender with a single line: "You found Saffron. Now find the girl who started it." And underneath that, an old photo, blurry, black and white. It showed a young woman standing at a chalkboard filled with code. The year was 2002, and written at the top of the board, in faint marker, Saffron 0.1. The first line of code, the photo haunted Jaya. It wasn't just the face of the girl. Young, focused, her eyes locked on a chalkboard filled with early lines of code. It was the setting, old, almost forgotten. The corners of the photo were curled, worn. The date in the corner read, April 2002. And the words above the code were clear, almost glowing through the grainy image. Saffron 0.1. The girl looked no older than Jaya herself. She printed the image and brought it to Sundar the same morning. He took one glance at it and leaned back, in silence. Something flickered in his eyes. Recognition. Memory. "Do you know her?" Jaya asked. He hesitated. "Not by name," he said softly. "But I've seen her before. Years ago. Long before I became CEO. She was part of a research program. Something experimental. Way before its time. It wasn't even under Google then. It was funded by a private tech lab in Palo Alto. Very small. Very secretive. Then what happened to her?" "She disappeared," Sundar said. "Almost overnight. The project went dark. And when I asked about it, someone told me not to." Jaya stared at the photo again. What if she didn't disappear? What if she was erased? The next few days passed in a blur of cold leads and dead ends. No one had records of the girl's name. The lab in Palo Alto had been bought out and shut down years ago. None of the online archives had the project listed. It was like she never existed. But then, one evening, a quiet email arrived. Not from a stranger, but from a familiar name. One of Sundar's oldest colleagues, a retired engineer named Shashi, who now lived in the mountains near Santa Cruz. The email was simple. "I saw the girl. Her name is Anita. She was my student. And Saffron was never supposed to be what it became. Sundar and Jaya drove out to see him the next morning. The house was hidden among redwoods, the air thick with pine and fog. Shashi was waiting on the porch, his eyes older than Jaya expected but sharp, alive. He greeted them with quiet respect, invited them in, and poured 3 cups of tea. They sat at a wooden table near a window that looked out into trees that seemed older than time itself. Then he told them the story. Anita had been a brilliant student, curious, gentle, obsessed with how people made choices. She had built the first saffron code as a side project, never meant for scale. It was a tool that could predict emotional shifts based on digital behavior. Anita wanted it to help people, detect depression, prevent addiction, offer support at the right time. She dreamed of using tech to heal, not manipulate. But when the lab funding ran low, the code was sold quietly. Her research was handed over to corporate investors, reshaped, redirected. The healing was stripped away. Only the control remained. Anita fought back. She leaked documents, wrote warnings, tried to expose what saffron was becoming, and then one day she vanished. Some said she moved overseas. Others said she was paid to disappear. Shashi didn't believe either. He believed she had been silenced. Sundar sat back, his hands folded. "Do you think she's still alive?" "Maybe," Shashi said. "But if she is, she's hiding. And she has good reason." Jaya looked at Sundar. "What do we do now?" He looked out the window for a long time. Then said, "We find her." They began the search that night. Not through government records or news articles, but through old tech forums, early email threads, abandoned subdomains. Piece by piece, they traced her digital footprints. Half-erased code libraries, forgotten usernames, one encrypted message after another. They followed the trail across time and silence, until finally, 3 weeks later, they found her. She was living in a remote village in northern Iceland, under a different name. No digital presence, no phone. Nothing but the wind, the snow, and a cabin filled with books and notebooks written by hand. Jaya made the trip alone. The plane landed in the middle of a gray sky. She took a long, winding drive through the mountains, and then she stood in front of a small wooden door, heart pounding. Anita opened it. She was older now. Quiet. Her hair gray at the edges, her face lined by years not of age, but of watching the world from a distance. She looked at Jaya for a long time, not surprised, almost like she had been expecting her. "You found saffron," Anita said. "Yes," Jaya replied, "but I didn't understand it. Not all of it." "No one does," Anita said. "Not until they feel it." They sat together by a fire, and for the next 5 hours, Anita told the truth. About the project, about the people behind it, about how deep the influence had gone, not just in search engines, but in political decisions, personal choices, even health platforms. Saffron had grown, adapted, been renamed, rebranded, but its core purpose remained unchanged. It was no longer about helping. It was about shaping. Jaya listened in silence. When Anita finished, she handed Jaya a box. Inside, it was the original handwritten blueprint of Saffron 01. "Take it," she said. "Use it to tell the real story." Jaya took the box and stood up. "Will you come back with me?" she asked. Anita smiled softly. "No, I've said all I needed to. Now it's your voice that matters." The next day, Jaya flew home. She walked into Sundar's office and placed the box on his desk. "This ends now," she said, and he agreed. Together, they prepared a detailed report. They gathered evidence, testimonies, proof. They didn't leak it. They released it properly, through internal ethics teams, trusted journalists, and finally, a public announcement from Sundar himself. The story shook the tech world. Headlines ran for weeks. Investigations began. Committees formed. Policies changed. Saffron was no longer a whisper. It was a warning. Jaya didn't return to her internship. She didn't need to. She was offered a permanent position on a newly formed ethics and transparency team, reporting directly to Sundar. But she didn't take it right away. First, she went back to the supermarket. She stood in the same aisle, near the bananas. And she smiled. Not because she had won, but because she had kept walking when it would have been easier to stop. A customer dropped something nearby. She bent down, picked it up, and handed it to him. He thanked her. She nodded, and, just like that, the circle was complete. Because once a stranger had defended her in a supermarket when she had no voice, and now she had found her own, not by fighting to be seen, but by refusing to disappear.